Welcome to a new kind of video here on the channel. Today we're gonna implement a new feature for our website. So as you can see right here, Explorer created a new issue 4 days ago, add individual links for blog posts. And I think it might actually be a little bit interesting for me to show you guys how I am going about that. So the reality of it is that I have never done what we have to do here for that. But first, let me explain. So this is our blog, or actually if we go onto our website here, we see our blog down here, where we have our individual blog posts. You can click through them. Don't mind a few that are a little bit there for testing reasons. And you also have this nice little list here to see all the blog posts. Don't mind it being a little bugged on Firefox. We're gonna figure that out at some point. Yeah, so that's our little blog here, which was originally created for sharing stuff like that, right? Voting for moderators. You have these things that you can click on. You can click on the voting, which takes you to the straw polls and stuff. And that's all pretty great. And that doesn't really work on a Discord message as well, right? You can share something like that on the Discord announcements or something like the Paxterya recap series, which we had in the past with many images and stuff. That just doesn't really work as well in the Discord message. So that's what the blog was originally for, and for that what we have here works well enough, I guess. However, now we are trying to actually maybe do some blog posts that are gonna be interesting for not just Paxterians, that should be listed on Google, for example. So you can search for something on Google and then you get a link to a blog post of ours. Right now that doesn't really work, right? We have the blog deeply embedded here, or direct link to the blog, but we can't link to a specific blog post at the moment, and that's what we're trying to fix today. There's also another issue with that. If we take a look at our Chromium here, in here I have disabled JavaScript, so that's exactly what happens if a crawler like Google, for example, Google Spot, which crawls through all the web pages and indexes everything and builds its search index, that doesn't execute JavaScript. So for Google, our blog looks exactly like that. Okay, so before we can actually start fixing stuff, I should maybe explain to you a little bit how this all works. So in a regular website, you have HTML files, HTML being essentially just the scaffolding of the website, maybe even some of the content. But there are stuff like buttons that you define in there, or you put in SVG images and text maybe, or tables like here. Then there is CSS, which is there for styling. In my case, we're actually using here SAS, which is a preprocessor, but basically works more or less the same way as CSS. That is there for all your styling, right? For example, says an article should be 60% of the width, and a button should have that background color and that foreground color, and if you hover over it, then the color should change and that sort of stuff. And then you have JavaScript, which is basically code that makes your site smart and interactive. Normally that is all separated into different files, and it's all a little bit of a mess. I'm using here now Vue.js, or to be more specific, Next.js, which builds on top of Vue.js, but don't worry about that too much. It just makes stuff a little bit easier to use. And as you can see here, these are all .vue files, which are, components that contain a template, which is your HTML, a style tag for all your styling, and then a script tag for all your JavaScript. And a lot of extra smart stuff that I'm not going to touch on now. All I'm saying is that we can put in some actual values in the HTML that can be loaded in dynamically through our JavaScript down here. This right here is now the blog component. So this entire component file is there to render this entire element. That's in the components folder in here. So these are all our components that I have written. And then there are the pages here. So pages are basically all those different paths we can look at, for example, /blog or /join us, right? So those are the pages. They are all in here. As you can see, join us is, for example, there as well. or there's the index page, which is the main page if you just go to paxterya.com. These pages then just contain a lot of components. In the case of the index page, that's a lot of components. In the case of our blog component, however, it's just our header, which is this thing up there. And then it's our blog component. And then there's a little bit of styling here to basically don't have these two things collide with each other, but that doesn't matter too much at the moment. Yeah, so this blog component just builds essentially the entire thing. Then there's still the blog single post component, which, as you can see, is a part of the blog component. Now this blog single post component is there for actually rendering a blog post. So that component essentially handles all that stuff in here, while the blog component itself draws around here, loads the blog posts in from our server, and that sort of stuff. Now the great thing of breaking these things out and separating that out is that we can now use this blog single post component in other places as well. For example, I'm now here on our staff interface, which is essentially where we do all the top secret stuff, you know. We can click on a blog post in here now as well, and as you can see, it just loads this up over there as well. So in here I can now, for example, edit stuff. I can put stuff in here and it gets immediately represented on the other side. I can put in some HTML tags and write in test, for example. And that's because, well, I'm just using exactly the same component to render this as I'm using to render this. So I don't have any duplicate code for that, which is pretty cool. So now the plan is, if we enter a link here, like blog slash, I don't know what ID this is, but like maybe 11 Halloween build contest, that doesn't go to this page cannot be found, but that instead it directly just loads up the correct blog post. And instead of this table here, I just want this blog site to just be like a list of all blog posts. Yeah, not the entire blog post obviously, but like just the title and the author, the date, you know, and like maybe the first paragraph or something like that. And then you can click on it and you can go to the correct blog post. And then when like a Google crawler comes along and finds this blog page, it just gets all the links to all the blog entries, can go through all the blog entries itself, and then just take everything into their index and then be that actually searchable through Google or any other search engine for that matter. Okay, so the first step for that is gonna be to build now a way to link to a specific blog post, right? The issue with that now is, as you can see, we have pages here. Now I don't want to create a page for every blog post. That's why I spent all that time building that functionality into the interface and doing it all dynamically. So we can just go in, write a blog post, click on save, and it applies and is there immediately. We don't have to change any code to write a blog post basically, and that should stay the same. Now that means that we have to dynamically generate pages, which is something I've never done before, so that now is gonna get a bit interesting. And so, as with all things, you always start at a documentation. There's a documentation for Nuxt.js, point, file system, routing. So essentially there's a whole lot of stuff that I'm not gonna get into now, but this, that we can go between like different stuff, like going on join us, which is technically like a different page, but not really. Nuxt.js does a lot of magic here, so we're actually not reloading the entire page. If you see that, it's like super quick, right? It doesn't have to reload anything. If we go into the network view here, and I'm gonna go onto apply, there's nothing happening here, right? It's all already kind of loaded. Okay, now here we are fetching some stuff. But basically there's a lot of magic going on here, with a regular old HTML site, you have like different HTML files, and you click on a link and then it loads that entire HTML file. Click on another link, it loads that HTML file. That doesn't work that way with Nuxt.js. So then there's this point of dynamic routes. We need to use underscore in front of the name, basically, and that gives us then in some way a dynamic site. I haven't used that myself, as I said, so we're gonna just try that out right now. First thing that I'm gonna do is I think I need to create a new folder called blog, and then I'm gonna move blog.view in there and rename it to index.view. I'm gonna take a quick look at the console here to see that there are a lot of errors here, but down here everything is fine. Okay, so basically that already worked. We can still go to /blog and this still works. If I now would rename that to, for example, blog.view, then yeah, this doesn't work. We just get a blank page. Now we would need to go to /blog. Now we need a fancy dynamic page. For that we need to use an underscore. So let's just do underscore post.view. That might be a solid name. And I'm gonna put a bit of code in here. So template, I'm gonna use an h1 tag and just say this is a single blog post you just directly link to. Okay, now that is not working. F5, and this looks already a lot better. So if you now go to /blog, we still go to this, which we will change up. Don't worry about that. We're gonna build that like nice overview in here. But now we can link to different stuff here. I can enter anything I want, and I will still go here. Now if I add another slash, then that again doesn't work. For that I would need like a folder with an underscore in front of it in here, I think. As I said, it's the first time that I now did a dynamic route. I have no idea what I'm doing here. And then we're gonna add some styling later. I'm just gonna keep it as is now. And we also need a bit of JavaScript in here. We need a data object, which looks a little bit like that. This is just some boilerplate, don't worry about it. Maybe add, you know what, we're not going to do anything here now. I am, however, going to define an async fetch function. So this function will now get executed every time we reload up the page. So if I put a variable in there, we call it test with an empty string, so this is just not really anything. And then we want to print that. Why? Oh yeah, right, I forgot. We need to, we can't have two top level elements, so we just gotta wrap everything into a little div. Okay, easy. Now in here, we are gonna assign a different value. Hi, this was made in the fetch function. If you now go down here, we can already see that we now have the text here that we defined here. So this gets called every time you go to the website. The special thing about the fetch function is that this gets actually executed on the server already. So Nuxt.js does some really crazy stuff by essentially just running through some of the JavaScript that we define in here and building stuff together. So as you can see, even if you don't have JavaScript enabled, you can still see something here. And this async fetch function, well, that runs on the server. So everything we do in here also works in a browser without JavaScript or for a web crawler. So that's the important part. Okay, but now we need to actually figure out what blog post we are actually linked to, right? So this page here gets executed for like every path we enter, like we did right here, /blog/ some gibberish that we never defined, and it all works. So the idea now is to basically just look at what our path actually is, try and figure out from that what blog post we should load, and then load in the blog post using our blog single post component that we already have, and that should be pretty simple. So, well, let's actually just try and put the path into the website. I know that there's this route, I think, but again, let's take a deep dive into the documentation. I think this was in here. Yeah, here, locally accessing route params. I think that's what we need. Alright, so because we use _ID in this example, that becomes essentially the ID parameter. So we need to go to this.route.params.blog in our case. Okay, this.route.params. No, not .blog, but .post. Okay, and now this displays whatever we have up here. Yeah, that's nice. Okay, now we need to figure out a structure for our links. I want to do it pretty simple. So if you take a look at that, you can see that every blog post has a unique ID number. So as you can see right here, every blog post has its own unique ID number associated with it. What would be also great is if the title was part of the link, because that just makes it easier to look at the link and see what it's all about. What I'm gonna do now is just do the ID number, then I'm gonna do I think it's called a hyphen or minus symbol, I don't know what the proper term is, and then we can just enter whatever we want behind that, like the title, or who cares, I'm not gonna look at that. So I'm just gonna do something like that. And yeah, that should be pretty simple now to get the ID from the string. It's a very simple JavaScript. We're gonna remove that here for now. Don't need that anymore. So const ID equals, that is our parameter, and now we just wanna split. It's a very simple string function. This essentially now returns a list of many strings split by that. So now we would have an array of 11, then this, and then that. So from that array we want to grab the first thing. So that's a 0. Okay, that's our ID now. Now we want to save the blog. I'm gonna do something like that. Add a blog variable that we can then use in the parts of our code. Initialize it to null. So that's gonna be overwritten once we load it in. And because I'm just a bit lazy, we're gonna copy that in from our blog component here, because we already are loading blog posts like that. And this then gets all the public posts. Now what we can do is some very magic code. We're gonna filter, and we just want the ones that have the ID that is the same as our ID up here. So there's gonna be a long list of blog posts. We are filtering through the long lists, so only the ones remaining that have an ID that matches our ID from the URL. Now this is a list of a single blog post. We are gonna just grab the first one of that, and then this should be kind of working already. If I now add the blog single post component, giving me a little bit of a hard time. Well, we have null here, so we end up with something that's undefined. Let's go back to this, and as you can see, that works. We have now a link that we can use to link to this one blog post. Oh my. And 12 links to 12, and 13 links to 13. Now it's a bit of a stupid solution, because we're now getting like so much more data than we actually need. Right, we're like downloading all the blog posts just to then filter out the one specific blog post that we actually want. Does it matter right now? Probably not. I mean, we can take a look at where we are fetching. Actually, you know what? This might not be as bad because as we know, this is the fetch function. The fetch function usually gets executed server side, so that means that this all happens still on my server and not in your browser. So back in the index, so essentially back here, we can add a nice little next link to blog 11. Whoop. Close it up and wait, we obviously need go to blog 11 next link closing bracket, and now that's hidden all the way up there. Maybe we put it down there here. Post is null, yeah. That's funny because we obviously set our block to null. Oh yeah, the issue basically now is that this gets now executed on the client, so this actually takes time, and this is trying to pass null into this, and that doesn't quite work. We could try and fix that by doing some magic in here, or we could fix this in, but this is just here for like displaying a blog post, right? I don't want any logic in here to like look at if we got a valid blog post or something. So I don't want to touch this thing actually. Okay, now how do we fix this little issue? Should we do a loading kind of variable here? Well, we can actually do something that's very simple thanks to Vue.js. We can use a v-if statement in here and v-if block. So only if block is something that's truthy, null is not truthy, this gets rendered. So this should be fine. Let's go back to the blog. And that worked perfectly. So this thing essentially only gets loaded once the blog post is something that we can actually work with. Yeah, that was a simple solution. So now we can link to stuff here. Now what we can actually do is we can try this out in our fancy non-JavaScript version. So that's what Google is gonna see. Go to blog 11 and this works perfectly fine. That is pretty nice. We obviously got to work on the styling a little bit, like this is not great. I'd rather have this be a little bit more like that. So not as white, for example. And also I think because of the background color, yeah, this section right here is the same color as the background, which is not great. Let's fix that real quick. And we can fix that again with some copy and paste. We can start by getting into here and we can copy out this little tidbit, which just gives us some variables that we have defined in other places already. Background shall be Paxterya, which is a custom color we invented. Was it? Do we have to? Yeah, we need to do the obvious and apply that to our wrapper, for example. Well, that is still not. Why it is? Is it maybe dark, or is it like that color? Yeah, darkest cyan, exactly. Now, this still looks unfortunate, to say the least. Yeah, that doesn't look all too bad, no. You could imagine like a button to go back to all blog posts. Let's get back to this tomorrow. Okay, now it's the next morning and I have already built in a little link here. So if we take a look at that, you have this nice little button here to go back to all the posts. And then we can go back here and back and front and back and this and that looks just perfectly beautiful. Okay, now we need to just figure out a way to properly display all the blog posts here. For that I just want to edit this blog component, which we're also using on our main site here. I want to change this then up. Gonna probably make like a blog overview component or something similar like that, where it just shows the newest post and then a link to that page right here. Okay, let's do this. So to do that we have to basically get rid of almost everything. We cleaned that nicely up, and that yeah, results in an error now because, well, this is pretty undefined, which makes sense because we deleted that. So what we now want to do is do a bit of a v4 here, you know, v4, because we now want to have one of those blog single post components for each block that we get from our API down here. If that makes any sense. So we need to display this for every blog post that we have, and that's why we need a v4. That's a for loop, basically, like in JavaScript or any other programming language. Let's see if I can remember how this went. For item and index, was it that way around? Like, I cannot for the life of me remember that stuff. Let's go in here. Here we have also one item, index in posts, in posts. Now this needs a key as well, and that key is then omdex. What's your issue now? Custom element in iteration. We have vbind key directives. So we have to do this. Okay. Now that should already work. We now need to use item here, and that already worked. Okay, great. Now this displays all blog posts one under the other. Well, first of all, we have the oldest blog post first. Again, we want to reverse the sorting here. Then this post equals this post dot. We want to sort A and B. Gotta do some parentheses around that. A.id minus B.id. No, I think it was the other way around. B.id minus A.id, and just that easily we have everything sorted now. Wonderful. IDs get larger over time, and this function right here just compares one blog post and the next blog post, and if like this returns a 1 or something, then it like changes stuff around. I don't really understand that completely. You just do it and it works, and that's then perfectly fine. Okay, now we don't want to display the entire blog posts here always. That's a pretty long list, so let's just make them a little bit shorter. Let's just do it this post equaling this post.map. So, oh well, it iterates through our array of posts, and for each post it executes this little function, and whatever this function returns is well, essentially gonna replace it. So we're able to edit all the blog posts now in here. X dot body shall equal X dot body dot slice. We just want a string slice starting at the beginning of the string, and then let's go with the first 250 characters or so. Well, actually that would be 250, and then we're gonna return X, and now those are all a lot shorter already. Yeah, this image, yeah, this is a bit of an issue, I guess. So as you can see, there's not a lot of text here. It's also a pretty broken image link. However, it's not a lot of text here, and I don't really want to split one of those image tags in half, because that would return in also some weirdness. What we can do to fix that maybe I can just use this div. So if I like this angle bracket div, and I can just split the string at x body equals x body dot split it up at the divs. Okay, and when I take the first one, basically this would return an array of strings again. And it would take like a long string and just cut it everywhere there's this sequence here, this opening div. And we just want a text before the first div, essentially. So that should be working, and as you can see, the image is now gone, which is exactly what I wanted. Maybe 250 is actually a little bit not enough. Maybe let's go with like 500. Give it a little bit more breathing room, and I think that's a bit better already. We can obviously tweak that in the future really easily, as you could already see. Now we have to obviously style this up a little bit. This needs some breathing room, I think. Yeah, I think that's actually not all that bad. Could be worse, for sure. So the great thing about this kind of styling work is that I can make it look okay. And then at some point Explore will look at it, will cringe, and then will make this look 10 times better. So I'm just gonna keep it at that. Okay, now the last part of this entire exercise is to, well, remove that link down here, but then make all these clickable, so you can click on a blog post and then get taken to the full post, basically. Now if you click on that, we get transported to the actual blog post. Isn't that amazing? Now the link up there is still a little bit bare bones. We wanted to have at least a title in there as well, maybe even a date or something. But that should be doable as well. If we do another one of those, item dot title, and we want to replace all the spaces with a dash or with a hyphen, or however you call this thing. Now the issue is, if we want to call replace, we could say replace space with that, and that already, oh yeah, because we are using these here and there, so it all gets a little bit confused. Come on. Okay. Now if you click on this, nothing happens. Come on, F5, and yeah, as you can see, season -4, and then we get spaces again. So that's because JavaScript with the replace function only replaces the first instance of this occurrence. However, if we use a regular expression, that limitation gets lifted from us. So we're here now on one of the best sites of all time, called regexert.com, that helps us build regular expressions. The thing with regular expressions is that they are black magic, and no single developer in the world understands how they work. Regular expressions look a little bit like that up here, for example, and it's essentially just a string that you can use to match strings. So this up here is like, let's actually start with like a blank one here. So character matches a space character. They could already work. And flags global. Okay, so that means if it wasn't global, it would only match the first one exactly. Case insensitive. I mean, it's a space, right? Multi-line, single line. That all. I don't know. Don't need that. But yeah, that could already work. So let's do that. This should be a regular expression that matches now every string. That wasn't actually too difficult. Let's reload this again, and as you can see, we now replace all the strings, which is exactly what I want. And we can check how this now looks like without JavaScript, and it looks exactly how we want it to. And we can click on blog posts, and this is all working without any kind of JavaScript. Now it's not really clear that you can click on those. That's a bit of an issue of this design, I think. Maybe we can add like a little something like p-click to expand. Yeah, that could work. However, this is a little bit on the large side. Yeah, that might not be too bad. Okay, last thing that we could add is 3 dots, right? You have like those 3 dots at when you cut off some text usually, so let's tack that on as well. Okay, but that should cover it for that part. Now, our block here is a little bit on the large side. Alright, I now did some work off camera to fix it all up again. We can take a look at it now. We can go back to our main page, go down to the blog. Yeah, see the newest blog post completely. And we can see all blog posts, and then we have this list of all the blog posts. We can click on one, get to this nice page. I now move the button down there and made everything look a little bit better, maybe, hopefully. I also fixed the site, so if we are on a mobile kind of size, this all still works and all kind of makes sense. Yeah, so that was basically it. That was how I now implemented a new feature, and using that one feature that we made, reworked some stuff a little bit to accommodate for that. Yeah, I hope that you liked it, that you understood something. I hope that I made everything as clear as possible. Yeah, please tell me if I can make something better, and if you wanna see more of that style of video, if I maybe should explain more of how the stuff works that is already made, or if you just want to see more of me implementing new stuff. Yeah, anyways, thanks for watching. See you all in the next video pretty soon, hopefully. Have a great time. Bye bye.